like to thank you, Gurudev, 'cause your children couldn't thank you enough.
My name is Roland Hartmann. I'm the chairman of International Teachers of Meditation Association, and with my partner Abner as CEO. And we are very happy today to have Theresa Olson as our guest speaker, who is going to give a talk on. We've just been talking a week ago. The topics will be two, and the one is the origin of the children's technique, and how what was the role of the parents of Theresa. And I just want to give a quick introduction to Theresa, and that is Theresa. I looked up at this book of 30 years around the world with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and I see Maharishi did visit you and your parents in 1959, the first time, and the second time in 1961.
Yes.
And but meanwhile, in all these years, you have been at the MIU, first of all at UCLA, where you have gotten a BA, a Bachelor of Art in summa cum laude in English, and a Master's of Art in Speech. And in at MIU, you got a philosophy degree in the Vedic psychology. Now,
And the PhD.
a PhD, yes. And it's a great pleasure, once more, to welcome you here, Theresa, to give us this talk today. And we know that many people know you, and I see it here on the attendees. And they're very curious and very honored that you give us the possibility or the chance to listen to your own words, how this whole thing did happen in those years. And please just get ahead, and if there is a question afterwards, we have space-time enough to have question and answers.
Just so that you know, why I have so many degrees was not my intention. It was Maharishi's request. The minute I would finish one, he would say, now get the next, and then get the next, and then get the next. And finally, with the PhD, he almost calmed down, but he still was thinking in terms of academics. I am not an academic. So for those of you who get into a similar situation, just trust, and the expansion of consciousness will happen. So I'm going to be transparent in a positive way to let you know exactly how this technique evolved. When Maharishi came in 1959, I think I can say that. Well, when he came in 1959, he was a very different person from the ones that you have met and known in the world government of the age of enlightenment and further, and so on and so forth. It was new for him. He had never been out into the West before. He had his BA in physics, but when he came from Hawaii, he was staying at the YMCA. That's where he was lodged while he was giving techniques on Hawaii. And the people in Hawaii bought him the plane ticket to come to the United States. And he came first to California. He went to San Francisco. Not much happened. But then he came to Los Angeles. And again, it wasn't as much at the very beginning as he had hoped until he met my parents. He was staying, as he put it, in a bachelor's apartment. And as Mrs. Lee pointed out, who had flown with him from Hawaii, just wasn't suitable. So my mom we had a 16-room Cape Cod home, 2-story, and my 2 elder sisters had just gotten married, leaving Tina and myself in the house. And my mom said he could come and stay with us. We've got lots of room. That's how it happened. He showed up. Well, first he sent a committee, and this was 1959. Hawaii was not a state, it was a territory. And the whole atmosphere was a little bit different. We're not accustomed to committees in 1959. And so my mom said, okay, sure. And we had to get dressed up. It was a Sunday. I was 10. I was supposed to be outside playing. I couldn't do it. I had to be proper. I was a little frustrated, you might say, having to be dressed up in Sunday best. And the committee came, and they didn't know what to say either. You know, we didn't really know. And they looked the house over. We were going to put him in the back bedroom, which was Tina's room. And Tina was a little upset with that. And everything seemed to be fine. And then an hour later, he came. And Mom and I were outside. I was getting nervous. I had never met a yogi at all, ever. And I didn't know what to expect. And Mom tried to explain he was sort of a bit like looking at one of the prophets from the Bible with the long hair and the beard and the silks and all that. We went up to the porch. We had a nice long porch. And on the porch, we had some geraniums. And Mom just had the idea, let's pick some of those. So she picked some, gave them to me, and said, you hold them between your hands like this, right where your thumbs are. As a 10-year-old, that's a mind-body coordination issue. So I was working on it, and the door slammed of something. And I looked up, and there was Maharishi walking up our walkway. And the very first thought in my mind was, we should be there to meet him. So I started to run. The very second thought was, it's not polite to run. Guess whose thought that was? So we stopped. I stopped at my mid-tracks, and Marshy walked up to us. We gave him our flowers. He said nice and came in. And that was my introduction to a master, someone who could talk and converse with me in my thoughts and in my mind and in my heart, not necessarily in my speaking. Well, at the very beginning, we had the evening lectures in our living room. Marshy, we had a little study at the back of the house, and it had two doors, one door on one side and the other door on the other side. So people could come in one door and then go out the other. And Marshy taught people there, initiated them, and then they'd go into the living room to sit down to meditate. Marshy said after a while, it's all working in mud, because everybody was watching everybody else to see what it looked like to meditate. So he was very concerned, it's not going to work, what are we going to do? And we had a playhouse, so to speak, in the backyard. And we decided to make it a recreation house, and it was in process. And Marshy said, well, I'll look at the recreation house. And he liked it. And so we had a construction worker come in, and they put the whole thing together. Now, Marshy came in May, that was June, that was July, and then it was August. And we were raised Catholics and still honor many of the traditions. And it was the 15th of August, which is the celebration of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary into heaven. And I had picked some flowers to give to Marshy and went into the study and said, Jay Gurdev, Marshy. I was on my way to church, but I stopped first. And he said, good, and closed the door. And I closed the door. And then he started this ceremony. I didn't know what it was. All I know is suddenly he put something on rice and it turned into flame. And I thought, this must be magic. I had no training, background, anything at all. And after that, when Marshy finished, he turned to me and gave me my mantra. And then he said, go into the other room, the recreation room, and meditate. 10 years of age. I go into the other room and meditation house, and I'm meditating. But after a little bit, I felt to open my eyes. And when I did, I saw 1,000-petaled lotus opening in my head, petal after petal after petal after petal after petal. I had never seen a lotus, but I knew it was the lotus. And so mom came to get me, and she said, how was it? And I says, Mom, are you supposed to see a lotus opening up? And her eyes went, zoom. We have to ask Marishi. At which point I thought I did it wrong. And so she escorted me to Marishi. And Marishi said, yes, how was it? And I told him. And he said, she's an old, 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 old soul. And I looked at him and I said, so did I do it wrong? Because that's what usually happens when you get into situations like this. And he said, go wait in the other room. And so I did. And I thought, oh boy, I'm really in for it now. And mom came out and she came over to me with these big eyes. And she said, you are not to close your eyes when you meditate. You are only supposed to walk with it. You can sit with it, but only with eyes open. And I was allowed to do it all day, wherever I wanted to do it. I couldn't close my eyes. But that allowed for me to be a part of the movement without being a part of the meditation part. And that was how the children's technique began. Margie explained later that the nervous system of the children are still maturing. They're very delicate. So rather than have them go into the intensity of the meditation experience, I think he thought if I transcended, I wouldn't ever come out, because that happens in India a lot. So he wanted the nervous system to mature, to be comfortable with meditation, back and forth and that kind of thing. But there was no set routine. The routine came much later. And as one person commented, there was an 11-year-old who was able to teach the children technique, and he had a different system. That was 61 or 62, and they went to India to learn to become teachers. Marshi never let me come to India. I never have gone to Rishikesh. I've always been in my country, in my laws of nature, unless it was with dear Roland in Switzerland or places like that. So I had this children's technique, and about a year after he gave it to me, 61, he was passing me in the hall. I had been fixing up his bedroom, and as I was walking this way, he started to walk this way, and he just said, and what is your mantra? And I told him, and he said, now say it this way. It was my second children's technique. It was so different from the formality that we have in the movement now. And so I had that technique for about 5 or 6 years until I was almost 16. And when I was that age, Maharshi was in Lake Tahoe, where he was starting the commentary on the Gita. And I was allowed to come up for just a few days because they didn't have a lot of rooms. The Granvilles were there. My mom was there. I think the Verrills were there. Jerry and Debbie had joined by this time, and they were there. Debbie was taking, as a secretary, all of the informations. And I was just enjoying how it was being written, because it wasn't in a formal studio. It wasn't on a desk. It wasn't that kind of thing. Each night, we would go out to the sands of Lake Tahoe. And Tahoe is the deepest lake in the United States. And on the sands of Lake Tahoe, he would start to dictate more and more and more. And he said, this is how it was dictated in India under the full moon light. And I remember that so deeply. It affected my heart to want to know the origins, the experience that comes with having that depth of experience. So the next day in the afternoon, I was out again on the sand, and I looked out on the vista. It's a lake, so there were mountains on the other side. It's quite high up in the US in California. And over the mountains, there appeared the crown of Lord Krishna with the peacock feathers. And I just looked at that and I knew it was Krishna acknowledging the work that Maharshi was doing. So, being a 16-year-old, I'm still more of a kid at that age. I rushed into the room, and Maharshi, no, he's busy. He can't talk. So it didn't quite happen until just before I was leaving to catch a bus back to Los Angeles to go back to school. And I had a chance to tell him the experience. And he didn't say much because, it was late and I had to go. But then we got a phone call a few days later. And he said, very, very good. When I come to Los Angeles, I will initiate you into the student technique. That was exciting. If I see a God, I get a technique. That was the connection that I made between the two. And on Thanksgiving Day, 1964, both Keith Wallace and I were initiated. And I had never met Keith before. I didn't know who he was. And he's turned into being this phenomenal leader of the TM movement from the perspective of the university. And I just sat there and got my student technique. And I could close my eyes, but only 1 minute for every year of life. He still had me on the tight string of not having tremendous amount of time to transcend. And I was going, oh God. And then when I saw Helen Lutz, I said, I'm going to be 60 before I get to meditate an hour. And everybody broke into laughter. When she told Marshy, he broke into laughter because that's what it was. It was this amount and then this amount. And I wanted more and I wanted more and I wanted more. And, I never did get up to an hour necessarily in just transcending, but it was a beautiful, beautiful introduction to the knowledge. Now, at that time in 1959, there weren't many other children who were around. I was pretty much it. And the Hislips, Mr. Hislop Marshy appointed as the first president of the spiritual regeneration movement. His wife had two, but they went off in a different religious direction. So I was basically the kid. That was it, me. There were no initiators to initiate people at that time. So, it was pretty much, I felt like I didn't fit in with my friends because I was meditating. I had a master. I'm going to a Catholic school. And my mom warned me, you do not talk about this to anybody because we could be excommunicated. So I'm carrying this burden on me for all these years as I go through Catholic school. And then when mom became an initiator and dad in 1966, things shifted because at that point, the Beatles came on board, the Sims group under Jerry and Debbie began, and I could start to relate more to the kids because I was also in college. And my mom, I am so honored to have been her daughter. She opened TM centers in 15 states. Jerry opened centers in 2. And my mom went out to all these states. She initiated over 5,000 people in what she was doing. And my dad was sort of behind it, working it out. He also would initiate with her, but it was mainly my mom. And at one point, she started to get a little tired. And I'm just going to jump the gun here. She wanted to be an advanced technique initiator. And Marshy said, look at Lillian. She is exhausted. She is burdened with this. I don't want that for you. So it wasn't that he didn't see value in her. He valued her too much to put her into that burden. And it just touched my heart that he cared for her that deeply, for Mother Olson. At that time, we had I'm jumping. I hope you don't mind, Roland. Is it okay if I go? Okay. So at that time, we had we had Spiritual Regeneration Movement Foundation that was developed in 1959. And Mr. Hislop was the president. Charlie Lutz was the vice president. I forget who was the secretary. And my dad opted to be treasurer. Marshy invited him to be president, but he said, I need to be near my wife. Her health isn't that good. And so he became treasurer. And that continued through 66. And then we formed the International Meditation Society. And it worked. But then when Marshy came back, he decided to give my parents a very special organization. And he said he wanted it to be near the front of the telephone book so people wouldn't have to thumb through. And in Los Angeles, that's a lot of pages. So it became the American Meditation Society. And under the American Meditation Society, we continued with teaching and organizing. About 65, 66, the structure of teaching really became formalized with the introduction, the preparatory, 3 days checking, all of that. That didn't exist when we learned TM. It was just, Marcy, is this right? You know, it was that kind of thing. And he would talk about the depth, but we didn't have a structure, no structure. So now there was a structure coming in. My mom could use it, and we could go and talk with these people and check their meditations, get them up to the experience of transcending where they felt satisfied with it. And then my mom would come home. So we didn't see her much at that time. And then Marshy, I think it was in 1970, he created a special organization specifically for my parents to keep them a little bit more rested. I'm going to use that word because now you know how we viewed it. They were getting burned out, basically. And he called it an organization that only reached out to businesses and corporations. And he called it the American Foundation for the Science of Creative Intelligence. And my father was the president. And it would be, we wouldn't advertise. He didn't want it to be advertised. He just wanted invitations to come to give a speech. And so it was working pretty well, actually. And then I remember this one, we were in the garment district in Los Angeles. That's where all the fashion industry is located. And we had been invited to give a talk. And Eric Eisen, some of you might know him, had made a film in Poland Spring, Maine, and Humboldt, and he was going to show the film. And my dad got up there to give an explanation and an introduction to the talk. And as he was coming back to the seat, we were in the last row, he stumbled and collapsed and died. He had a massive heart attack. And then it was a little bit jarring, you might say, because here we are at a TM event, and my father dies. And about an hour or so later, Jerry managed to connect to Maharishi for us. We were still in the hospital. And Maharishi said to my mother, and we could all hear it, my father was a very special soul, and he would never have to come back on earth. He went to the highest heaven. So that helped me to understand the value of service in the TM organization, that whatever talents we bring into it become a little bit more manifest and leads to a greater reward as we move forward. So that's my story.
Thank you very much, Theresa. It's a wonderful story, and we are actually amazed to hear that story, and to satisfy our curiosity of this pioneering days or years when Maharishi approached the so-called West via the west coast of the United States. And it's always been accompanied with some sort of mystical feelings. Yes, but your mother also, everybody knows, did write a book. The book is written, yes, The Hermit in the House. And
That is the first version.
I'm sorry I don't have it.
I don't know it either. That version was, Marcy had to go off to talk with Doris Duke, who you might know, very rich lady. And only so many people were allowed to go with her. And so mom felt that the Lutzes would go, but mom would stay behind. And mom was going, what am I going to do? And Marcy said, write the story of that first summer. And my mom had a photographic mind, so she didn't create, she recalled. And that is what the hermit in the house is. And the way that I confirmed it was when they were going to go to Marshy's lecture, and then he was going to come and meet us. My dad used this expression all the time. What in the world is this? What in the world is that? So I went, what in the world is a yogi? And and they explained very sweetly what it was like. And Tina thought it was going to be someone she could date. She was 15, 16, and she lost interest. And I thought, how exciting to meet a yogi. I still didn't know what that was until Marshy came and stayed with us. And it was pretty much, a clash of cultures, you might say, because we were Westerners, we were Catholics, we lived in Los Angeles, and someone from the Himalayas, raised as a monk, working with Gurudev, stays with us. And then he invites these people to come and be with him. Mataji, she was the only lady ever initiated by Gurudev. That was that story. And Ramrao and Lakshman came. So I lost my bedroom. I was put into the walk-in closet with just adjacent to my parents' bedroom, and it had windows looking out. Wasn't so bad. That was my father's desk and my bed and some, drawers for clothes. I lived there quite often, to tell you the truth. So it was an unexpected learning mechanism of what a different culture from the East might be like. Excuse me. And I remember this one time, Mataji got concerned because my mother was cooking for the Greek theater where she worked. The Greek theater is an outdoor summer theater where in the summer, artists and singers and dancers would come and perform. And they had no place to get any food. So my mom would prepare meatloaf sandwiches and things like that, and we do it in our kitchen. And one day Mataji walked into our kitchen and went, oh, he cannot eat any food from this kitchen. She was horrified. Clash of cultures. So the resolution of it was to rent an apartment across down the block and across the street. We were in an apartment area, a flat. And that's where the food for Marshy was prepared for from then on. And Mataji would invite me to come all the time. And this one time, we were going down to eat, and I was walking with Marshy. I mean, totally different atmosphere. And we got to the street, and I raised my hand. And Marshy said, "What is this?" And I said, "I have to hold the hand of an adult to cross the street." And he sort of chuckled and took my hand, and we walked across, and then he dropped it as fast as he could. Well, that evening, Mom came and said, "You're old enough, you don't have to hold anybody's hands to cross the street." So you know what happened at that point. The only other time I saw him holding the hand of a child was Leona Bach's son, Ronnie, who was 2 or 3. Oh, hello. And Ronnie was coming down the steps of a plane, and Marshy was holding his hand to get down. But it was just different. We were like, he was my second father. He was part of the family. We were part of the family of his, and it all stayed that way until about 66.
Yeah, that's the wonderful value of your family, because if that wouldn't have happened, we altogether wouldn't have been that what we have become, teachers of transcendental meditation. And now it's such a great gift to hear firsthand from you about these days and years. And I'm wondering what maybe we open the floor to the questions. Maybe somebody wants to question you something.
Yeah, just a quick question. Theresa, that was a beautiful talk. Very beautiful talk. What is the earliest age that you can do the children's technique?
At that time, this is the part I left out. Thank you. I have a whole section on how my mother was instructed to teach children. And it was as long as you could keep a secret, you could learn TM. So Marcy had my mother create a course for children. I only remember 3 of the lessons, but I want to demonstrate them for you. So one of them was to water the root to enjoy the fruit. And this is the example. We gave them all a little gift of a flower or a plant, and we would say, now you have to water the root to get the fruit. And they would take it home and water it. That was one thing we did. A second thing we did was to explain karma. Mom would throw a ball, and she'd throw it, say, I'm going to throw it to you. And she'd say, whatever you do comes back to you. So then they'd have to throw the ball back. And we do that to everyone around. And then we had to figure out when children could actually hold on to a secret word. So we had them practice. Can you keep a secret? Oh, yeah, of course I can. Well, here's a secret word for you to hold on to. Apple. You can't tell anybody, but you have to keep it secret till we talk with you later, okay? Okay. Those who could keep the secret got their mantra. Those who couldn't keep a secret, even telling their family, their mother, whatever, we said, let's wait a little bit longer. But some could start at age 3. The 10-year-old stage, I mean, when I heard that children are starting to get their secret word of wisdom at age 10, are meditating, I don't know it even. I don't know what it was. I was sort of blown away because it wasn't how I was raised. Does that help?
I guess so, because no, yeah, Tony, does it help?
Although it might be a bit difficult to work out if they couldn't keep a secret, because they could play a game with you that gave the impression they could keep a secret, but not actually keep the secret. So,
I'm an older teacher, and you know how scary that is in the first place. So yeah, I know it was a game, but it was also, these were concrete operational programs to see how advanced their brain was and being able to retain information of this nature. And people didn't tell their mantras. The kids kept them secret because, hey, I've got a secret. And we would go through these other little things like the water the root and the ball throwing. There were about 6 or 7 other lessons that mom gave them, so that they had a chance where we could find out from the parents if they told a secret or what went on here or there. We could check with them on it, but it wasn't formal. It wasn't formalized.
I mean, children are very naturally active. They don't keep, children don't keep still very much. They're always active. So I'm just wondering whether it was quite noticeable, perhaps, the contrast between perhaps some of the stillness that came about through the practice. When you bear in mind that children are always very fidgety.
You're so wonderful. You're bringing out all of these informations that I had stored and forgotten about. Thank you. We are fidgety, and that's one of the reasons why walking with the word of wisdom was a more valuable technique for the children of the West. And I remember I had one family 2 doors down that had 10 children. They were Catholics. And then one family 2 doors down that were Protestant that had 5. So this was the group I played with, the group of 15. And I remember at one point I said, let's take a walk with our angel and walk with our angel around the block. And so we're holding our hands out like this to our angel. And I'm saying my mantra as we're walking around the block. So I had forgotten about that. And the other ones, they loved it too. They did the same thing. They didn't have the mantra though. So it was part of my game.
Yes, I remember when I was initiating families with kids, and it was such a wonderful gift to give them the technique of meditation. And there's one thing I wanted to say, because one of them they had very much troubles in getting the thinking process and the speaking process integrated. So we call it legasthenic. And within 4 weeks, or even faster, this disadvantage did disappear. It was such a wonderful phenomenon that all of a sudden this deficit just disappeared for that kid. And it could improve in school much better than it had before.
Yeah, it's a technique. If it's a mental technique, it's affecting the brain physiology and allowing our brain physiology to better integrate between sound and form. And I think that was part of the value of what went on, because instead of losing anything, I felt like I had gained more. And Marcia often used that idea of the ripples on the pond. You throw a stone in and the ripples come. And the stone for me was the mantra, and the ripples were the thoughts that emerged from the ability to say that mantra. I think I was a kinder person because I had my secret word. I was able to be there for others because I had my secret word. And I could feel comfortable with people who may be having a rough time and not trying to correct them because I had my secret word. I was more tolerant of what people needed to go through.
I just want to mention that in our teacher training academy in 2023, we had many Russian-speaking ladies also, and one of them was specializing in teaching kids in Kazakhstan. And as far as I know, she's still doing. I hope she is present, or her husband is there today, and somebody is doing the transcript so shortly. But that's why, just for you to know how far-reaching that the children's techniques has moved and spread today over the globe. It's fantastic.
It is wonderful because the children of all of us are the leaders in the future generations. And if they have this integrated wisdom of life from an early childhood, their nervous systems grow into maturity with that integrated wisdom. It'll be a different world. It'll be very beautiful.
Okay, we have somebody, it's Volkmar Scherer from Germany. He has got a question to you. Volkmar,
Yes.
go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time and the effort of telling us so much deep knowledge from the very beginning. I can only say what you tell us, like what Maharishi told to the people, to the individual people. This is always very much honey for the feeling, for the heart,
Yeah. Yes,
if you tell this to anyone who does not meditate or so, then the people would say, like I would say before I got meditated in 72, I was very skeptical. How can you say what kind of soul somebody is? Maharishi perhaps could, but we don't know. There are many things going around which are taken for granted, but you can't prove them. And we always have to acknowledge when we speak with other people from other lives, from other walks of life, that they don't possibly take it as much for granted as we did.
And I think that's the point, is that the system was formed, and the way that the children's technique is taught now is not the way that I learned it. But this is talking about the origin of the technique when everything is very different.
Yes.
I was going to talk today to a group of Iowans, for instance, Iowa. It would be very different. I would have to deal with the water the root to enjoy the fruit in the cornfields and in the soy fields and things of that nature, but always sort of connecting it so that as the children are doing their chores, they have the connection to an inner chore as well.
Yeah.
That's how I
Yeah.
would. Does that help? Does it make you feel better?
Yes. Thank you.
Very
Somebody else wants to raise a question to Theresa? It's now a big chance to do it.
well. You can.
All right.
Theresa,
Yes.
yes, hello. Well, thank you for that wonderful talk. As Volkmar says, any such personal stories of Maharishi are always very, very dear. Um, you've been in the movement from the very beginning, or very close to the beginning, and the movement has changed so much. ITMA is sort of an offshoot of Maharishi's thought, trying to maintain something that we thought was very important and close to our hearts. And the world is apparently in quite a mess, big differences in the world, countries, and great opposites. And I wondered your perspective, one on the future of this knowledge, because we set up ITMA to perpetuate it because we felt it was slipping away. And anything about where the world is heading, how they will meet together.
It's a beautiful question. Thank you so much for asking it. And I will speak from my heart on this. You know, the movement's perspective, so I don't have to deal with that one so much. But we have to remember the Yuga when Maharishi came was Kali Kali Yuga, the time of the greatest destruction, according to the Vedic perspective of time. And following Kali Kali, it goes into, excuse me, Kali Sat, which is supposed to last for 10,000 years. So Maharishi called it Satyug. He came at that borderline time to help us with these technologies to be able to transition into this time of frequencies that are going to be totally different, not only on our planet, but throughout the whole galaxy. And because of that, we've been trained now to look within to be able to integrate without. That's one way I put it. He also said that there would be others who would come after him, that he wasn't the only one bringing out the knowledge. So for those who can't get to TM, look and find and ask, because the divine is listening if we ask. And that is the whole idea, to be able to ask. As we get deeper and deeper and deeper in that beautiful value of wholeness, ask. That's what all of the cities are about, is learning how to work with that wholeness, how to work with the ocean in order to manifest a particular response from the ocean. So that is where I think it goes. Yes, there are some up and down times coming. We have a lot of debris. I like the word debris rather than karma, to tell you the truth. It's just leftover stuff. We have to clean it up and get rid of that stuff so that we can appreciate more fully the light of life that is coming to bless us. It's not a religion. I sometimes get a little religious, I'm sorry, but it's just the event itself that will be happening. And it's not far away. It's already started in one respect. It's already begun. But remember what Maharishi said about the dawn of the age of enlightenment? It's always darkest before the light. And we're really into that dark period right now, cleaning up the debris. And if we can just sort of maintain a little witnessing factor and recognize it for what it is, we've got to clean up our karmas. We've got to clean up, and I'm talking government, country karmas as well as individual karmas. And once we get that cleared up on the other side, sort of already there, will be exactly what we were looking for.
Yes, so you're optimistic. That makes me optimistic.
Thank you. Some days my husband would confess that I'm not always that optimistic about it. But, it's okay. I have a saying, and I just have to share it with you. If you can't find God in poop, you haven't gained anything.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you.
Yeah, because I'm back. Avne is in the center of one of these thunderstorms in the Near East, and that's why I fully understand your question, Avne, and I appreciate that very much. And I also see that perspective, and I'm so happy to confess or to hear from your voice, Theresa, about this perspective, because sometimes people could get some sort of tiredness or all of a sudden don't see through. But I remember in the Bhagavad Gita, even, there is this wonderful passage, the story that the hero, Arjuna, doesn't see any future. He's totally almost collapsing. And Arjuna explains him what to do and what to touch that area of non-doing. And so we can't always see ourselves in a kind of paradise, but we sometimes see ourselves confronted with huge problems which we don't understand why they are with us. And I sort of, I'm getting uplifted when I read that part of the Bhagavad Gita in that context. And I'm sure we are moving into a direction which is good for the whole of humanity.
And for the whole planet, not only humanity.
Yes. Is anybody wanting to ask another question to Theresa? It's a good chance to do it now.
Maybe I can say something, Roland?
Yes, go ahead, Carmelo. Carmelo is from Malta.
I'm in Italy right now, but yes, I live in Malta. Teresa, I had some, my internet was very poor, so the image kept on freezing, but I heard almost everything. Absolutely fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. Thank you very much for sharing.
You're
The kind of thing that if you were to tell somebody in a normal situation, they would think that you are fantasizing or making things up, but it's absolutely wonderful, wonderful. And I feel very privileged to be able to speak to somebody who has received such blessings. As also a Catholic and somebody who has started a spiritual journey in a conscious spiritual journey through Hinduism, but has also rediscovered the mystical aspect of Catholicism. I just wanted to share that it's very heartwarming to hear that you also have this feeling that the darkness we're experiencing now is not final. It's not the Kali Yuga is not the end, that it is a moment of awakening. And I just wanted to share that Pope Leo XIV has chosen his name because of the social difficulties that we are facing today, and they are akin to the social difficulties that Pope Leo XIII was experiencing. And there is another factor that is very reassuring, that Pope Leo XIII had a vision of Satan tempting God and saying, it is easy for you to be loved by the people because you have the church. Let give me the church for 100 years and you will see I will spread throughout the whole world. Fortunately, those 100 years are now over. So there is hope. In 1984 was the end of this 100 years, and that is when Pope Saint John Paul II consecrated the world to the Blessed Virgin. So that there is hope that hopefully this era of enlightenment will reach us within our lifetime. I hope that we will be able to see it within our lifetime.
Well, that's beautiful insights, and I thank you. And again, you touched an area in my heart that's been hidden. One of the projects that Marshy gave me in Switzerland was to read the different world religions and find the qualities of the vacuum state or the qualities of the transcendent in each. And it was a privilege and humbling to find how beautifully expressed in the language of the time and the culture these fundamental values of life were expressed. So as you're saying, they're there if we know how to see them, if we can perceive them. Buddhism, yes, Hinduism, yes. Catholicism, yes, it's there as well. Judaism, yes, it's there. Muslim faith is there, but not as concrete because it came out a little bit later than the other faiths. And this Pope Leo, he is expressing the value of heart, the value of feeling. In this new age that's coming, it's an age of loving kindness and compassion. And if we can be in loving kindness and compassion wherever we look, then that age becomes stabilized. And I reflect back again to those early years with Maharishi, when we were building that initiation house in the back, the recreation house. Even Maharishi would get up there and pound the nails and cut the wood. He was just part of the family and pulling it together. And I remember he did get a cut, and Mom had to bring him into the bathroom to try to clean it and put a Band-Aid on it. And I'm hovering over it going, what color is the blood? Is it blue? Because that was the color of the boil. And it was just plain old red blood like the rest of us. So, he brought us into the feeling that we just do what we need to do. We stay in that loving kindness, compassion, and the world responds. The world needs people to love them. And when the transcendent loves you, that's the best kind of loving. So thank you for that question.
I just had a
Thank you very much.
I just had a thought.
Thank you.
I just had a thought. The thing that that made Maharishi's world so rich is that on the one hand, he came from the tradition, as did Gurudev, of Advaita Vedanta, going back to Shankara, which treats the world as a mere appearance, that it's Maya, that it's impermanent. And at the same time, he brought in the richness of yoga philosophy, which is Sankhya, which is dualistic, so Patanjali, that kind of tradition. So he brought in both aspects of it, which made it very, very rich. Because as you remember, he said that you have to live 200% of life, 100% absolute, 100% relative. So that's the amazing richness about what I would call Maharishi's world. It combines both approaches. Of course, I mean, Advaita Vedanta has been doing that for centuries anyway. It's been embracing all of these yogic practices and techniques, which are essentially dualistic, because Patanjali was a dualist, really. But they've all been brought into the fold of Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dualistic. So it was just a thought that I had. It just adds to the richness, the overall richness of this totality of experience.
You're very much a learned scholar, and you're the kind of person that Maharishi looked for in those early years. Because when he came out, I remember he came out only with his copy of the Gita. He wasn't versed in all of these philosophies. He knew of them, but he wasn't well versed in them. And so when people like you came to be with him, he would spend hours discussing and figuring out what was this and how does it comply. And that's how this knowledge of the science of creative intelligence came out in such an integrated, unified form of both knowledge and experience of Advaita and Vedanta both together. You're absolutely right. And thank you very much for sharing that.
Theresa, I am having a question also. It's more formal kind. What you have got the PhD in Vedic psychology. Can you give an idea what Vedic psychology is?
Just exactly what we were discussing, which is why I could say something about it. Psychology is looking into the levels of the mind, if you will, and understanding that like concrete operations, formal operations, yada, 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 the physiology behind it, this behind it. But what David Orm Johnson did with this field of knowledge was to take Marshy's concepts of levels of mind, and then we would research it. And we would research the thinkers behind it, such as I'm starting to get to the age where I forget their names. Yours was Piaget. Piaget was one, that was my husband. And looking into Freud and looking into this one, into that one, looking into Carl Jung, and finding that their qualities that they considered to be fundamental were the qualities of the inner awareness in an unmanifest state. And so we gained an appreciation for that language. My dissertation, it was the first one that was ever done. So, you know, it was on the psychophysiological effects of Maharshi Gandharva Ved on Western audiences. By the very definition of music therapy, a music from another culture should have no influence. And especially when you think about Iowans who don't meditate, and they were exposed to this Indian music, and we found that some of the people in the Mental Health Institute actually got so much better that they were allowed to leave. It was that much better. And we didn't explain the philosophy. We just played a half hour of music, half an hour every day, about 1:30 or 2 o'clock for a couple months. And the improvements were phenomenal. But then when you don't play the music, they revert back. So, you know, it was a learning process. Psychology was a very beautiful field to be in, because studying the levels of the mind, intellect, behavior, and all of that, we started to see the integration. I didn't think of children's technique. They're living concrete operations and they're involved in behavior. And so we take them into a deeper level just by saying this word, and the brain physiology integrates. And Fred Travis was one of the students while I was there. He graduated like that. I graduated in 11 years because nobody knew how to study music, and I had to find out how it worked. So it was a lot of inquiry. When I would teach courses there, I would make sure to teach courses where the students could possibly go forward in a career. So for instance, media psychology. Do you know how the media affects you? In the mind, body behavior? We did EEG studies. Fred would do them while people were watching commercials on TV, things of that nature. So we became more sensitive. We did psychology of religion because Marshy had put me into that field. And it was a very beautiful experience to be able to acquaint people with the fundamental values in each religion that were the same, if you want to say it that way. It was really, really a beautiful experience. And I taught just a few others. And then the department was canceled altogether because Marshy said it was competition to Vedic science. So, so it was a very interesting experience for me to be in that area and to be in this area. But it's a it's a good field of knowledge to be in because it's mind-body integration.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Theresa, sorry. Thank you so much, Theresa. I had a Freudian mishap. Theresa, I just heard the bells of my church next door here belling, and we have done now 1 hour already, and it's our talks usually about this time, and we have to consider that we kind of keep to that kind of frame. And if you don't mind, once more, I thank you so much in the name of the Teachers of Meditation Association for having given us this talk today, and the conversation and the question and answers to everybody who has been raising a question here today. I would like to just announce that for the next week, we are going to have a talk on our next teacher training academy, the plans. Actually, I would like to invite Avner to explain this a little bit, because he, as a CEO, he can do it much better than me. Avner, can you please?
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Roland, and again, thank you, Theresa. First, I would like you, Theresa, to ask you if you could come on again in a couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll find a topic for you, or you'll find any topic you feel. I think people would very, very much appreciate a continuation of this talk. I mean, you spent, what, 6 years with Maharishi in the movement? I think more than an hour is deserved for that. Regarding our next talks, next Sunday we're going to have like an introductory lecture to the Teacher Training Academy. I'll show you a few slides of the last one we had. The week after that, Tony Daniels, who's on this call, and you probably listened to his very interesting comments, will be giving a talk about basically waking up, and I'll leave that to him. So here's a short overview of our Teacher Training Academy. So this is, we're calling it Executive Teacher Training Academy, because it seems nowadays people cannot go away for a year to become a teacher, as more or less I did. This is the graduating class. It's in a temple in Kerala. And this is basically the birthplace of Shankara. And there were so many nature supports to this project. It was very dramatic. You could really feel it was like a Maharishi project, even though theoretically he's been gone. But it reminded me of all the projects we did for Maharishi in Israel, and how we always had this wind behind us, filling our sails and making things happen. So we landed in Kerala, and our taxi driver said, "Would you like to see a temple of Shankara?" I said, "Oh, Shankara, I remember that name." We went there, we met the head priest. He said, "Sure, bring them out." He did a puja for the course. He handed out the puja sets, and when we graduated, we came back and he gave them the mantras. And then this text, which is in Roland's hand, this picture and the text, he went, Roland and Bob, who's also on this call, I think, they went up to the Shankaracharya of Srinagiri, who received them very graciously and was very interested, and we told him everything we'd been doing. So this is Surya Narayan, the head priest of this temple of Shankara. He's giving the diploma to our very, very dear Irena from Siberia. And this is him saying hello to me and Roland. And this is the diploma. And this is the people with all their diplomas. At the very end of the course, we came back to the same temple. And this training has 18 blocks. It's designed as an online course. And we have all the materials, very thorough. We learned a lot from the first course. So it's very well organized by now. 18 blocks. And these are some of the blocks, typically they're either a week or a month, depending how we want to accelerate it, depending on what workload the student can do. It's like MIU, just you study one topic for the entire block. So intro and prep lectures, the basic and advanced puja practice, teaching students, the first initiation, verifying the experiences, all these things. And these are all the blocks in their full glory. So each block starts with a basically half-day seminar, questions and answers, exercises, and so forth. And then they get all the materials, and then it's self-study, study with a buddy, study in the language group during the entire block period, and electronics help us with that. You must pass the test for the previous block in order to go on to the next one. Because like in the first course, we want to make sure that we have very high quality teachers. And it is a heavy study load, requires daily practice. And we give them several tools, tapes to listen to help them practice, support, and all that. We are considering, depending on the people who register, we're considering doing focus weekends, a day or two to shorten the course, perhaps get together for a week here and there, if possible, further to shorten the course. And of course, people who want to learn to be teachers of meditation have to be regular in their meditation, have to have access to the digital Zoom and phone, and have to commit to self-study 5 to 7 hours a week minimum, and of course have some desire to uplift humanity. And this is the course is 1,800 euros. We have some scholarships available, and the next meeting about this is on the 21st of September. So that concludes our little overview of our next coming talk about the TTA. Thank you again very much, Theresa, and I would love to have you come on for any topic you wish to share with us, because it's been a joy to hear you. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you very, very much, Avna, for giving us an idea of the next teacher training academy introduction next week. Thank you very much once more, Theresa, and it's been a great delight to have you had here today, and I'm looking forward, as Avna did invite you, and that would be a great thing. I'm very much grateful for the stay today. Thank you very much, and Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.